Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today we're going to make a fun inky Christmas card using only one sheet of cardstock. So what you're going to do with your cardstock is you're going to get a nice, sturdy one, pretty good quality, and you're going to cut it at 5.5 inches a long way, fold it in half, and you'll have a square card. And then save the scrap because that's what we're going to do our stamping on. And the stamps we're going to use today are from our sponsor, Top Flight Stamps, and you can save 10% on your purchase if you use the coupon code thefrugalcrafter10, and they give free USA shipping on orders over 50, so it's a pretty sweet deal. So Top Flight has these stamps from other countries that are kind of difficult to find in the United States. This sentiment stamp I've used a few times. It's got a great variety of fairly small, some of them are kind of small, so it's nice, you can fit them in a card, but there are a few big statement ones as well, which are nice for the middle of a card if you don't like to write too much. We're going to use a little Merry Christmas from that. We're going to use some of these accessories from Katzelkraft. They'll go with any of their funky animal stamp sets, but I'm going to use this cute dog here. And I'm also going to use a stack of presents and the Santa Claus hat because it is a Christmas card. I'm also going to use a scarf. I think that would be cute to put the scarf on the dog. We're not going to do any masking, so it's so totally easy. We've got all this scrap to do our stamping on, so easy peasy. And I think I'm also going to use a stencil because I want to do some distress inking in the background, and I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do for inking, so I just want something that I can spritz a little water on and give it a little pattern because I really want the dogs to be the star of the show, and I don't want to like a pattern paper competing with it, and that's why I decided not to use a pattern paper. So honestly, if I could hoist my leg up over the table, this is like a bar height table here that I work on, you would see that I have like tape stuck to my pants because I just had some regular masking tape on hand. I didn't have any painter's tape, and I want to tape this down so that I can protect my my card and make a nice little border. I'm working on a foam stamping mat by, I believe, Carabel Studios. It's also a product from Top Flight Stamps. But what I'm going to do first is just tape it down on 3 sides because I am going to be stamping the sentiment before I add the bottom piece. So we've got those. So this is a great hack if you don't have painter's tape or your tape's too sticky. Just stick it on your sweater or your, I have leggings on, those are great, those are always linty, and it just keeps your tape from being too sticky so it doesn't rip your paper. And I'm using Tuxedo Black Memento ink, mainly because I'm going to use alcohol pens to color with, and it doesn't run when I use that type of ink. So I'm going to stamp Merry Christmas here. Make sure I've got it good and inky. Gonna give it another stamp just to be sure. You could use, a red ink if you prefer, or green ink. It's up to you, whatever you want. And just give it a second. The reason I like to use this mat, and I wish I didn't forget it so often, forget that I have it, is it gives a little bit of a cushion, and my table is not perfect. So if you're stamping on an uneven, unperfect surface, it makes your impression just perfect because it will push up, it'll squish back, I guess. Science, I don't know. So I'm going to set that stamp aside. I'm going to stamp these other pieces, and we're going to let that dry before I put another piece of tape over there. So we've got this stack of gifts. And the nice thing about this is you could obviously color it for a birthday or for any other occasion where you'd be giving a gift. Nice perfect impression. And I'm going to do the scarf because dressing up animals is fun. And we'll do, when I'm doing a bigger stamp, I like to bring the ink pad to the stamp. It just gives you a better ink application. And you don't have to press really hard, especially if you have the pad underneath. You just want to make sure you give your ink time to go from the stamp to the pad. And, oh, Santa Claus hat, we gotta get that. And then I also like to leave a little scrap left over, and that's what I'll test my markers on. I feel like I have something under that. Oh, I think I might have been pushing too hard, but look, we've got really nice impressions there. And now we can put our final piece of masking tape there. And I want this bottom border to be a little bit wider. I'm just trying to figure out how much space I want to... Well, I think I'll just line it right up with the bottom. That way I don't have to worry about if my inking gets a little crazy. Now, because I have this masked off, I am going to just go right ahead and ink right here. If you are a little sloppier of an inker and you're afraid that you might get ink on this mat, then I would just peel the whole thing up and stick it on like a scrap of paper or something, because if you get ink on this mat, it's going to be hard to see it because the mat is black, and if you're like a Distress Oxide ink might not dry on this type of material, so so that could give you some issues. I think I'm just going to do some kind of some blues and greens just to kind of get, you know, an outdoor night type. Actually, you know what? Let's just do some colors. Let's just do some fun colors. All right, got some applicators, some homemade and some otherwise. And I think I'll use a little gold. I like to use that gold in there because it's fossilized amber, just because it gives you, it's a good color that if you have other colors, it doesn't make mud so much. It's kind of a nice bridge color. Like I can go into green with this, I can go into red with this. It's not going to be, it's going to look nice. It can go into blue, it can go into green. So I'm just going in, throwing in a few waves of this. A very abstract background here, guys. And now I think I will grab a little bit of red. I don't want to go too crazy with the red, but I do like to get a little red in there. Candied apple. Just a little bit off the edge. Because it's Christmas, you gotta get a little red in there, right? It's actually really easy to work off the tape. I find it's a little easier to do this than if I'm trying to just blend and I've got just sitting on a piece of scrap paper. I think just having that tape there does kind of help a little bit, I think, because nothing moves around on you. I am getting used to these. It took me a while to get used to these store-bought ones, but I am getting used to them. Let's do a little blue. I don't think I've used the Salty Ocean yet, so... Oh, maybe I have. It does look a little familiar now that I've grabbed it. Oh, it's really dark. Don't want to go too crazy with it. Oh, I don't think it doesn't really make a good purple with that red. It's kind of just making some mud. There we go. Oh, that's blending out better now. All right, now I will grab some green. And see, hopefully this shows you that you do not have to be really talented in the blending department. Why do I have red? I need green. Oops, I put that on the wrong. Oh, look at that. I think I flip-flopped. I flip-flopped some ink pad covers. And by the way, I think I was using Abandoned Coral there and not Candied Apple. I think I got my covers mixed up. And we'll do a little green. And you can really use any stencil for this next technique. It's just basically to break up the background a little bit. There. I think that's fine. And so what I'm going to do here is just lay this down on top. And don't worry, I used acrylic paint on that before, so it's not going to give me, that ink isn't going to run or anything. And I'm just going to give it a fine mist of water. Super, super fine. Hold your mister pretty far above. What you don't want to see is anything puddling under your stencil. Take your time. Sometimes just letting it soak in for a second and then giving it another mist is perfect. So what's happening here is the areas that are getting the water, they're lightening up. So that's what happens with the Distress Oxide inks. When you wet it, they kind of oxidize. They kind of get lighter. Like if you had like a piece of metal exposed to oxygen, and it gets kind of like it's got that kind of white mark on it. And there we get that cool, just very subtle two-tone look. So now what I'm going to do is set this aside, and we're going to color our cute little animals. I'm going to start off with a dog, and I picked 3 shades of light browns. I'm going to start off with the darkest one, and that is called Tan. And I chose these because they have a brush nib, and when I'm working in a larger area, like all this area on the dog, having a brush tip is a little bit easier to blend. Like I don't have to prime the paper, I can just kind of go in right with the marker, right with the shadows first, which is nice because it saves a little time. And I just because brush tip markers have a larger, softer brush-like nib to work from, it just goes a little quicker. Now I don't really have to be that careful around the collar because we're going to have a scarf going over that, but if you color it neatly, you have a little more options as far as when it comes to cutting it out. You can cut it out with a border or not. It's completely up to you. So that's kind of neat there. Alright, now I'm going to grab my second darkest color. By the way, these are the Blick Studio markers. This is tan, this is caramel. Camel, not caramel. Camel. I was thinking, boy, that's awfully light for caramel, but... And so with this, I'll actually pretty much finish coloring in, and then I'll go into the really... I'll just leave out the super, super lighter areas. I want to color right over what I've already colored, so it just can kind of mush into what I'm coloring with this color. Does that make sense? Hope so. And these are alcohol-based markers, not water-based markers, in case you're wondering. If you're using water-based markers, you could totally do this. Just, I recommend you get like a ceramic tile or something, and you scribble the marker on the tile, because sometimes getting those lighter colors is tricky. But I find if I scribble my markers on a tile, then I can pick it up with a clear blending marker, and then that gives me, it gives me a much greater range of color. And also working on, like, if you are using watercolor markers, use a watercolor paper. That will give you a little bit better results as well. Now I'm going to try jumping into this light color called Beach. It might be a little too light to jump this much. We can go back in with the other color if we need to. It's pretty easy. I think I need a little bit more of that medium color on the body, but I like that lighter up on the top of the head. The lighter a color is, the more alcohol it has in it. And sometimes, you know, like your clear blenders, they can almost act like an eraser, because that alcohol just kind of wants to push the pigment to the outside. So I'm just very gently dabbing in with this medium color. Then I'm going to go back with that lighter one and just kind of smooth it a little bit. Now, I'm working on my grimy old contact paper table, so if you are working on a nice table, make sure you have like an old magazine underneath or something to catch the extra marker that is bound to leak through your paper. I'll show you the back of this paper in just a second. So now I'm just going back in with that darkest color, adding any shadows in that I want, like on the bottom of the feet. And again, I am being careful because I think I might want to cut this out with a little bit of a border so it stands out from the background a little bit more. And I'm going to blend that in with its neighboring color. And then you can decide whether you need to mix it in with that lighter color or not. That's up to you. There, that's kind of pretty. I think a little shadow under the nose maybe there. When I had a dog, she was always digging in mud. She would have a dirty nose. Now I'm going to go in with that darkest color and do the spots. You might want to give it a little second to dry, especially if your paper is really blendable, because it might want to bleed out. Like it looks like it bled out a little bit there. I could have just have my marker tipped. I'm trying to keep my hands out of the way so that you can see what I'm doing. Or you could go to like a completely darker marker if you want to. So if I'm going on like a wet area like this, what I'll do is I'll just make sure I don't color right up to the edge of the lines just in case. And let's see if that's dark enough to do the nose. I think so. Oh, I think he's cute. And then I'm going to want a little bit of pink for the tongue. Try this one here. This is, ooh, that looks really orange, but let's let it, actually it's not too bad once you see it out. I might add a little bit more of a cooler pink to it as well. There we go. Okay, now we can color the other elements, and I'm just going to use my new cheapo Ahuhu markers for the rest of this, because we have smaller things to color, and I actually like the tinier tips on this, and I got a bunch of colors in a small amount of space, and I like that. All right, so let me pick my colors and I'll be right back. Before you color anything, I recommend that you do a blend test on the cardstock that you plan to use. Now, always make a swatch of your colors before you do any color and keep that right with your markers, and that will save you a lot of time and frustration. But then when you get to the actual paper you're using, find a little scrap area and do a blend test. And so what you want to do is grab the colors that you plan to use, and this is the way I like to do it. I like to go dark and do a little swatch of my dark. Then I grab my medium color. These are the Ohuhu markers, so I have number 1, number 5, and number 15. I don't think the color numbering system there makes very much sense, but that's what we got. And so I'm going over and bringing some of that color down. Those two blend really nice. And then I'm gonna go in with this third color here. And that just makes sure that the colors, I can look at them and make sure they're gonna be complementary and look nice together. And also when you do this, especially if you're not sure what cardstock you have, like if you're like me and you have like a file folder full of white cardstock that is random, then you can see how well it's gonna work with your markers before you actually start coloring. Because sometimes you want to color everything with a lighter color and then add your dark and medium. So I'm going in with this darkest red and putting in the shadows. So I'm putting the shadows right next to the fluff. And if you do go out of the lines on this one, you don't have to worry too much because you could cut that one close if you want. And then I'm going to go in with my next darker color, which is my number 5. And of course, any alcohol pens are fine. You don't have to have the same ones I'm using at all. They're all going to work about the same. So just keep that in mind when you're coloring. In fact, when people ask me, what marker should I get, Lindsay? I say, get a couple different markers from different companies and see what you like best, because, you know, my favorite marker is probably not going to be your favorite marker, and, you know, your best friend's marker is probably not going to be your favorite marker. Try a bunch of different ones. In fact, if you do have crafty friends, see if you can borrow some markers and try them before you buy them. And there, we got a very subtle blend there. That looks nice. We'll cut that out in a minute, and we'll keep on coloring. I also grabbed a few shades of green, and so I'm going to do a little test here to see how they look together. Got that dark green, and we've got this lighter one, and they blend pretty well. Good enough, I think. So what I'm going to do is I'm first going, and I might even go in with another shade of green to do the darker stripes, but for now I am just going to get in my shadows. And you don't have to be too neat because we'll cut this part out too. A little bit right there, that shadow. Oh. Now all cardstocks blend a little differently, so practice with what you have, and you'll find ways to overcome any sort of shortcomings it might have. In fact, I think I might use a blue. I wonder about that color. Let's see what this color would look like on top of it if that's dark enough. That's kind of pretty. I grabbed this for our present color, but I think that would be nice as stripes and fringe on this scarf. I'm just going to try to make fairly thin lines in case it bleeds out. There. And then, you know, do your gifts however you like. I like to reuse the colors as much as I can, you know, from other parts of the picture, so that way I can have a harmonious design. Once you have everything colored, you need to trim everything out, and I like to use a pair of fine microtip scissors for this. And it can also help if you cut your paper down a little bit. I think I'm going to leave like a scant 1/8 of an inch border on the dog since he's got that little tail, and I don't want that to get ripped off. But everything else I'm going to trim fairly close. Okay, so I had a really cool idea, but unfortunately I did not have the supplies to execute it. But if I had this stamp in a smaller size, this would be so cool to stamp right here. Like if you had a miniature Santa and his flying reindeer, if you stamp that, they're kind of going off, and it would be like the dog is watching Santa and the reindeer fly away. I thought it would be so awesome. I thought for sure I had a little Santa reindeer stamp, but I do not. But this would be ideal. That's also available from Top Flight, but that's too big for this particular idea. Sometimes you come up with those ideas as you're creating. So I cut out all the pieces, and we're going to need to trim down this the scarf a little bit so that it'll fit it'll fit and cover over the collar. So actually, I'll do that right now with my little scissors. I'll probably just go by those one of the little stripes and use that as a guide. Now let's see how that looks. And if you want, you can ink the edges just to give it a little bit, oh, I kind of like that. I like it a little oversized. Just if you want to have that black line on the edge. I don't think it's really going to matter. And then when I cut these out on the presents and the dog, I left a white border, and I also left a white border on the top of the hat to make it stand out from the background a little bit. So we're just going to set these aside. I also cut out a little snowbank with some glitter paper. This is just, I don't know when I got it. I've had it in my stash for a while, but it's just a really glittery paper. You could also make your own glitter paper, just cover it with adhesive and sprinkle it with glitter and, you know, press it down. This stuff sheds really badly. So obviously you can't use that card if you're sending it like to troops overseas or anything like that. There's no glitter allowed, and that is definitely not stuck down well enough. It would get all over everything. So I'm removing my tape. It's doing a pretty decent job not to tear or peel my paper, but a tip that I found is that if I pull the tape off like this, like kind of bend it at a really sharp angle, then it's less likely to tear the paper. I think it like relieves the pressure a little bit, so it's not, I don't know, I think it just kind of evens out the pressure a little bit. But look how nice and neat and crisp that is. Love it. So for adhesive, you can use whatever you like. Now I have a deficit of cutting things straight, so I have a little cheat piece of hill there. Math is not my strong suit, guys. And I've been voiceovering these card videos for quite a while, and I was like, oh, you know what? A lot of people say they like it real time. I really should, you know, I'm just going to do this one real time. And now I'm thinking, oh my gosh, everyone's going to be, look at that, I've smeared the glue off the edge. Everyone's going to be like, Lindsay, you need to go back to the voiceover. You can't talk and craft at the same time. Oh boy. I'm going to stick that right there. Now the good thing about zip dry glue, even though I got a big old glue smudge off the edge, is that once it dries, I can roll it off, kind of like that adhesive they put magazine labels on with. So that's the reason I grabbed it, because I knew that with all this little gluing of tiny pieces, I was bound to get some glue smush. Glue smush is, of course, a technical term. There. Looks pretty good. And I can roll that off, that little glob of glue off in a bit. I like that. You can kind of see it's gonna shimmer. If you did this as assembly line style, I don't think it would be too bad. You could do all your stamping one time, all your coloring, you know, some night watching TV, that sort of thing. So there's our little doggy wog, and there's our pile of presents. Oh, I like it. And we've got our other little doodads here. Now, maybe I was debating whether or not I wanted to pop up stuff, because I do have the never-ending supply of yellow foam squares. Actually, we found some more. My daughter was cleaning out her room, and there was another sheet of these things in an old puzzle. It is like seriously the gift that keeps on giving. I think I will pop this dog up because it's a pretty simple card, even though we've spent like a day and a half making it. Seems like, doesn't it? It's a long video. It's really quite a simple card. It shouldn't take that long. So we might as well do whatever we can to make it a little bit fancier. And sometimes you actually have to cut these little guys to make them fit, or to get the size you want. So don't be afraid to do that. We'll apply some dimensionals to the back of this as well. Well, you know what, maybe I won't. Maybe I'll leave that flat and just pop up the dog so he's the center of attention. We'll also need to put some of that on at least put one of those on the hat. And then we can use liquid glue for the other stuff. Actually, yeah, let's get this adhered. I want to get the glue down. I want to get the dog down before I start gluing all the little pieces, or I'm going to make a mess. So there's that. I like those. I chose some colors to add on to the presents that were a little different than what I had colored the rest of the scene with, just for a little bit of charm, and also because I used some crazy colors in the background with those distress oxides, so that would kind of help combine the background with my coloring from the foreground. So especially when you're mixing mediums like we did here, like where we used the alcohol pens, and we also used distress oxide, that's just going to help keep everything harmonious. So just, you know, if you're not using the same medias all the way through, just try to match the colors, or at least have some colors cross over so that you have that continuity. That little scarf on there. Dogs wearing clothes, man, just cute. I remember Hazel, we used to put these antler headbands that she would wear at Christmas time. begrudgingly. Maybe we'll put a little smidgen of glue on that too. Because when I send a Christmas card, I don't like to send an activity. And that's what happens when your Christmas cards fall apart before they reach their destination. And if that does happen to you, say, well, I sent you a Christmas puzzle. I sent you a Christmas activity. Didn't you like it? Of course it was on purpose. I don't do shoddy workmanship. And there you have it. A fun Christmas card. It's a little unusual, but it was a lot of fun to make. And I love doing the Distress Oxide backgrounds by masking the edges because it gives you that look of an extra layer, but it's nice and light. And it's got a little bit of a modern, almost Polaroid looking twist, and I just like it. I hope you do too. Let me know what you think in the comments below. To find any of the products that I used today, check out topflightstamps.com. They have some fabulous stamps, and actually I just colored these two cats from that set. There were ones I stamped before, and I just kind of colored them the other day for fun. A lot of great stuff there. Use the coupon code thefrugalcrafter10 for 10% off, and till next time, happy crafting!